In the meantime, Tanya, while I figure out the technical things, I will just introduce myself. I'm Joreen Patmore. I founded Rebel Women Lit, which is a book club slash experiment that's grown beyond anything that I could have imagined, where we read books that are written by Black women, written by Caribbean authors, written by queer authors, and we try our best to have these complex conversations in very, very simple ways over drinks. Well, I just remembered my mother watches this channel, so I won't complete that. So very simple conversations, and yeah, so welcome to this space. And today we have with us Tanya Batson-Savage, and if you know me, especially when I'm discussing literary spaces in the Caribbean, you know I've mentioned her name before, so I'm gonna just leave it to Tanya to introduce herself, and I'm gonna figure out the technical glitches happening in the background until then.
All right. Okay. So go ahead and say who I am, what I do. All right. So basically, in a nutshell, I'm head cook and bottle washer, more bottle washer than head cook of Blue Banyan Books and our imprint blouse and skirt books. You see my shirt? I read blouse and skirt books. Yeah. So what we do is basically we're publishers of books from 0 to whenever you feel like you stop reading. And in our estimation, the only thing that should stop you reading is death. So we publish for the gamut, largely fiction. We've done a bit of poetry. We're very happy about putting out a play collection. And we do children's books, so we do picture books. We do illustrated chapter books. We do novels. Our largest collection is of novels for young adults, and that includes a range of different types. We've got fantasy fiction, drama, romance, yeah, the works, history, historical stuff, you know, the works. Yes, I think that's Blue Banyan and Blouse and Skirt in a slightly fat nutshell.
But what drove you into going from reader, was it reader, writer, publisher, or was that in that order?
To a degree. I'm not sure how orderly it is, but I think I was writing. I've been writing for as long as I could remember, but I had not imagined being writer as something that I would ever do. I just.
Ooh, what just happened?
So I think my phone interrupted. I'm gonna have to turn it off. I didn't know it would do that. That's what happens when you're in Apple World and it connects everything. Yeah, and I'm like, I don't know. Sometimes the stalking is good, but I don't know how to disconnect it. So, you know, my phone rings and my computer's trying to tell me my phone is ringing and all of that. So to go back to the journey from not sure we wanted to write, and then I think I just did it, and then several years ago, a very good friend of mine had a baby, and she made me the godmother, and without consciously thinking about it, I knew I wanted to be the book godmother, you know, and so I always loved folktales, right? Because my grandmother was a really great storyteller. She could really tell you a good story. I think that's where my writing gene comes from. So she would not have been a writer, but she was a great storyteller. And so I wanted her to have stories like I grew up on from my grandmother. So of course I went to the bookstore, right? Could I find a book? Not a Caribbean folktale book. And I looked and looked and looked, and I finally bought one that I didn't really like, but it was the only Caribbean folktale book in the stores I checked. And so I realized, okay, if the books I want to see in the world aren't there, maybe I have to start putting them there. And that's how, so I self-published my first and only collection, which is Pumpkin Belly and Other Stories. And I didn't know much about publishing at the time. All I knew at the time was that I had a problem with what I call the Disneyfication of children's literature. And that's where it's more about the image and the story related to the movie than about real story. And so, but I think I didn't realize how powerful the Disneyfication was at the time. So I did this book that was neither fish nor fowl. And so it's changed format since. And so, you know, I went from there, and it just, one thing led to another, and here I am, about 25 books later. This is where we are. Yes.
All right. So when we spoke separately, I know we talked. Well, I mentioned that I know quite a few people, to some extent, myself included, who are interested in becoming a publisher or getting more of these books out there, because I think one of the strongest thread I've realized, especially with Caribbean people who now have access to Kindle, who now have access to every book that you want, is that a lot of the times when you go out and you get these books, you start looking inwards and you're like, wait, where are these stories that exist for us here in the Caribbean? And when I said this to you, you're like, don't do it. Like, don't do that. So I'm curious about some of the challenges you've had moving from reader to publisher, and what are some of the surprising things that have happened?
I think one of the lessons I learn every time is how little I know about publishing. In that every time I learn something new, it reveals how much more there is to know. Because publishing is a strange space in terms of, I mean, just it isn't manufacturing, and it isn't completely service industry. So it's a melding of the two, and that, especially in the Caribbean landscape, makes it a really weird bastard child. And remember that bastards don't exist in Jamaica, so it is really strange that it is a bastard child. So there's that challenge as to exactly how it is and how it functions. And one of the thing that was most surprising for me and most challenging was that when you are in the role of reader and you look at it, it looks like a totally democratic space. You think that bestsellers are bestsellers because they're the best books.
Bestsellers.
Exactly. And bestseller must mean best, right? You know, you assume that books that are popular because they deserve to be. And this is not me saying they don't deserve to be, but when you get into the back room, when you pull the curtain and you see the wizard doing all the things, and you understand that there is a significant difference between producing what you think is a really great book, because I proudly stand behind our catalog, right? There's a difference between doing that and marketing that book. And when you look, if as a reader you want to understand the difference, take some of the hottest Black women writers right now and listen to their thank you speeches and hear them thank their publicists and their whatnot, and because it's those parts that isn't spoken about in reader world is a key part of publishing. And that was one of, I think, the most surprising things that I learned. And maybe it was surprising because I think I probably was a pretty naive child, and I just preferred to read and watch TV, so I wasn't paying attention to it, because maybe it should not have been surprising at all. But yeah, that was it. But I think the other surprising thing, and that's the good thing, is that I've been lucky enough to meet some people with some great generosity of spirit, and I really love that. And they've helped too. And these can be from colleagues in the Jamaican landscape. It can be like people like yourself. It is like, and I'll always be happy to shout out people like Kwame Dawes, Justine Hensel, all those people who help make book world easier. And I've often I send, you know, I've touched base with Johnny Temple of Akashic a lot. I have if he looks like he's aged, it's probably because of all the questions I've been asking him. And it was just great to find people who were willing to share their knowledge and didn't feel like, you're trying to take over from them. And that was surprising, but a good surprise. And then the challenging nature of publishing was a surprise to me, because I thought you just put out a great book and presto.
New York Times list. Oh my God. There's a New Yorker writing a review about this book. Yeah, I remember when I just started talking about the books that I read on social media, and publishers or people started reaching out to me, and I was just like, I did not know any of this existed. Like 3 years ago, I knew nothing about what was behind the curtains when it came to publishing. The idea of interacting with authors, interacting with publishers was ridiculous. I remember talking to you and you were like, you don't know what NetGalley is? And I was like, no, am I supposed to know what that is? And it's just completely changed the way that I've viewed what gets out there. What do we consider to be a good book? What's considered to be popular? And what makes a book actually popular? Like, how much money do you have to put behind a book before people assume that it's good even before they pick it up? So that to me is very interesting, especially in a Caribbean landscape where we don't have millions of dollars or even hundreds of thousands of dollars throwing behind books for it to be publicized, especially in where you're working right now, primarily with young adult literature. How do you find it different from what your colleagues internationally are doing versus what you and your colleagues in the region are doing?
So I think there is good reason I don't have many colleagues in the region doing this. A lot of publishers in the region are sensible enough to stick with academic and textbooks where you can actually make some money, as opposed to going into trade books, which is, I hate saying this, but it's the easiest thing to say. I remember once walking into Sangster's and I saw the sign leisure books, and I just turned around and walked out. So I'm like, what do you mean leisure books? Books aren't just for leisure, they're for everything. I've since learned to calm down. But so to give an example, one of the ways in which I also came to books is I used to review books for the Gleaner here in Jamaica. And we used to get books after they're published, sometimes months, ages after they're published.
As reviewers, you would get
as reviewers. Yes, that's when we got it. So in my understanding of how book world worked, it was the review process came after the book came out. You drop the album and then people review it. That's what I thought. That's what happened.
Right, hold on. So would it be that you would have to buy the books?
No, they would have come.
Publishers sent it to you after.
Yes, it was sent to the Gleaner desk after. Right. And I mean, and a lot of it a lot of them were local and regional books as well. And so in the local space, it was kind of okay at the time to get the book after it came out, And so when we did our first novel, All Over Again, which remains one of my favorite books, hands down. And I'm not talking about thank you. I'm not just talking about in the books I published.
Right over there.
Awesome book. And so we went that route. We did the book, and then we were sending it out for reviews. At the time, I wasn't even anticipating sending it to foreign magazines. I was just doing it locally, and it was fine for local purposes to send it there. Like, you got reviews in the Caribbean Beat and in Gleaner and in the Guardian, in the Trinidad Guardian, and it worked in the local space. And then that was when I realized after, when I started looking online for review, and this tells you how little I knew at the time, for the submission guidelines. I was like, what? 3 months before? 4 months before? How you expect me to publish the book 4 months, print the book 4 months before publish it. Me not have that kind of money. You know, it was, so that was eye-opening to understand that mechanism. And there are smaller publishers who don't necessarily get into that game, because that is a huge ask. Even just the publishing of physical arcs is a huge ask, you know. Yeah, because your budget is tiny, what you have for marketing is small enough, and all of that, and you have to, you end up trying to balance being penny wise without being pound foolish, you know. So all of those mechanisms that work in traditional publishing, all of that lead time, all of that generating things well in advance, you know, it is a tricky part, and it's part of what differentiates the region, because we're okay with after, you know, regionally. But when you're trying to segue with the international market, you have to change that.
Yeah, I realized just how different the standards were as a new reader somewhere going behind the curtain, a newish Bookstagram or whatever people want to call it. So I remember the stark difference when I received, I think one of the most elaborate arcs I received was Black Leopard, Red Wolf, that came from Riverhead, and they sent it in a box full of confetti, and customs took out all the confetti and threw it away.
But of course, what is that?
But I mean, I saw from the videos that confetti was in there, and there were like little remnants of it, and it came in this velvet pouch, and brilliant artwork, and it was just so beautiful. And then I think the other book I got was, I believe it was a Kwame Dawes book that I got from Akashik, and there's no difference between the ARC and the physical books. So I was just like, wait, they just printed the physical books early and sent it to me, because printing ARCs separately would have been far too expensive. And what is that? Like, they're both Caribbean books. We had to bat up Riverhead for them to even send us the ARCs, because they were sending it to mostly African-American reviewers. And for me, it felt, I could see the difference between how Caribbean writers get their work out there for reviews when it's a smaller publisher versus when it's a large publisher. And that does not necessarily mean that the quality of the story is any better, because you see a lot more pictures of it, or there are a lot more reviews that exist of it. And these are American publishers. So I'm just wondering, how do you compete as, or do you even see it as a competition when you are a Caribbean publisher who's trying to ramp up that, I guess, pre-sale or ramp up the hype before? Is that something that you consider?
It is something that I consider, and you've mentioned you've been mentioning the bookstagramming culture a bit since this conversation, and it's an important part of the game change, because even you're saying you're batting up Riverhead, like 5, 6, 10 years ago, you couldn't have batted up Riverhead. You could have said, Riverhead, beg you please do, and then would have got OU, right? Because what's happening is, and I love to say it's a democratizing of the landscape, but I always like to explain what I mean by that. And I like to use America as an example. And I used to say, so I can say, Obama was elected and Trump was elected. So democracy doesn't necessarily give you a good thing, but it does give you a thing. And what's happening is that a lot of people, and it's bookstagramming and people reviewing books on YouTube and on Twitter and all of these spaces have allowed people who years ago would have been their individual nerdy selves to build community around just how nerdy they are and how much they love books, and the fact that, yes, when they do see a pretty book, they go, that's become a thing. And it's, you know, and that has given power to those people, and that's given power to voices who are like, yeah, but our stories are good too, our stories are important too, we are valuable too. And the fact that you are now important for how much you help to make a book a part of the visual internet memory, makes you now important to larger publishers, even when they mightn't see sales in the region as important, because they pay attention to spaces like Rebel Women Lit, not just because you're important to Jamaicans, but it's because your voice goes beyond Jamaica and or Jamaicans at home. And that becomes, and that's a key part of how, social media and this kind of landscape has helped to push and propel things and make that difference. And that's why, even though no, I do not see any of our future books coming out in velvet boxes with confetti. I still think we do have hope for putting out great books, and to put that forward and I make it a part of it because I believe in beautiful books. And recently, just talking about it the other day, I was talking to, so one of the books we're coming out with is A Million Aunties by Alicia Mackenzie.
I need to read that. I got like the brief of it in the email, and I was just like, I need to get my hands on that book. I don't care about anything else. That book.
I want to send out. So the other day I'm going, I was planning to largely send out digital ARCs, and then I'm like, okay, should I scrounge and find the extra money to do some preprints to send out physical books? Because I want to see it in when you do a book stack, or when Book of Sins does a book stack, and all of these other people doing book stacks. I'm like, it's just as pretty. It deserves to be there too. And that becomes a thing that, as a publisher in this day and age, you do have to think about. You can't say you don't judge a book by its cover. You better judge it by the Instagram photo, though.
Right. So for me, I feel like the way I see it is as a book influencer. I absolutely hate the term, but as a book influencer in the middle, and especially given the background that I have with looking at just the theory and understanding the politics of where I position myself in the world, and where the world positions me, there is the relationship that you have with publishers and the way that they see readers, the way that they see influence, and how you can wield that influence. So even if, let's say, even if I post something on Instagram and only 30 copies of that book get sold, because whether through Rebel Women Lit or through a local bookstore or here in Jamaica, we have thousands of other followers who are diaspora, who are just across the world, who will order that book, who will get that book. And there's the longevity of, you posted that book 3 years ago and someone else is seeing it. And there's that end of the spectrum for me. And I think that's great, because I think there's a lot of push going in that direction, where it's pushing the publishers to be more responsible, to look at our stories are not just for production, it's also for us to consume. You can't just come and take our authors and our great stories and leave and not send them back. So there's that end for me. On the other side, for me, I think about Jane, who grew up in rural Jamaica, who had no access to these books, who pirated a lot of her books growing up in high school, because my thing is either I'm going to read the books that are like a decade old in the library, because the YA section was just not it, or I scrounge up all my lunch money and buy 2-3 books at Bookland, or I can go online and get my books. So there's that idea of a drain on other persons who limited access to books. It's a real thing here in Jamaica. So when I post on Instagram and when I argue with publishers to, yo, you need to send ARCs, or yo, you need to be sharing stuff with the Caribbean, that's fine, but how do we get to that other side? So I want to talk a bit more about because I think we're both readers, so you're always thinking about these sides. The other side is the distribution of books here in the Caribbean, whether it's distribution, the rights, what's happening in our libraries, what's happening in our bookstores. Why is it so much easier for us to find books by foreign writers than our own Caribbean writers, unless they're textbooks? So what's that like? Because that to me is still something behind the curtain for me, where I'm just like, why is it so difficult for us to get our books? And why is it so not even just urban centric? Because sometimes it's not even available in the bookstores in urban areas.
So one of the things is that a part of the challenge of being in the Caribbean space is that we live on islands, most of us. Not all of us, but most of us. And the problem with living on an island is, well, you live on an island, and that means you're a little disconnected from your closest neighbor, right? All that water and all that thing, and that becomes a physical issue. Then part of the thing is this same thing that's affecting the arts in general. When the world was a bigger place, right? And by that, I mean, when it took longer for one set of people on this side of the world to get to that other side, it was easy to separate issues like copyright into, you people in North America have this chunk, you people in the UK have this, and then UK people, since you had been nice enough to have colonized and enslaved these people, and you still kind of own them.
You Commonwealth.
I mean, so you take the Caribbean rights, as opposed to, even though we're in North America, as opposed to closer to North America. So so you end up with separations, like a person actually taking UK and Caribbean rights, and then North American rights to separate. So you over here want to get a book, and what you've seen, because the US version is likely to have been published before, depending on where the writer is located, and so it's a US publisher, you're seeing it. But and as a lot of writers have got more savvy, there are some people sell world rights, you can do that, and some people split it up, especially when they have agents. And so the agent sells the North American rights to this publisher. So that publisher there really has no idea who is going to or will ever buy rights to anywhere else. And so that becomes a thing. And so although you're seeing the North American book and you want that one, when you get in touch with them, they're like, you want to say, we can't sell you. And that becomes a disconnect that it's weird and it's challenging. And then you have, so that becomes a part of the distribution nightmare. And then you have things like just how archaic our libraries are in the region, right? Was it this? No, it was not this year. This year did not happen. So last year, I went I was invited to speak to some students by the Manchester Parish Library, right? And so I went down there, and I was thinking about whether or not I should read or I should just talk. And so I decided to do a mini survey before I decided, and I decided to ask the children what they were reading. And remember, I'm saying this because one of the biggest lies they love to tell you is that Jamaicans don't read and our children are not interested in books. And so I asked the children, what are you reading? And where do you read? And one little girl was like, I like to read a lot of fan fiction on Wattpad. And a lot of the kids are like, I read this on Wattpad, and I read that, and I read it. So I said, all right, children, put down your hand. Now all the teachers and the library people and the ministry rep, what is fan fiction? None of them know. What is Wattpad?
They don't know.
One of them know. And so there are ways in which there's this massive disconnect, right, about that. And there is also that presumption that we don't read and we're not interested in reading. Mm-hmm. It keeps you from trying to excite the next generation about the books. And I ended up doing the reading. And when I did the reading, at the end of it, I was taking out my books outside, and this little boy stopped me outside, and and he did the chant from the book, and I laughed, and I said, the book is in the library, you should come back and read it. And him say, "It'll keep tomorrow, miss." I said, "Yeah, man, the library will be open." And he said, "All right, I might come tomorrow." And the fact that he was asking me if the library was going to be open tomorrow meant he had never contemplated going to the library just to read on his Saturday, right? Yeah. Where he can do so many things. And that says that we have a duty to make them not think that books is just a boring thing, and or to find the kinds of books they want. And then that brings us to the other section. These libraries are severely underfunded, right? I have not, by choice, gone into the main branch of the New York Public Library. I haven't gone in there because I went outside. I was standing by the lions, and I said, I cannot do this to myself, because if I go in there and see what you look like, I am going to have severe identity issues, right? I'm going to wonder about what is wrong with my country and what is wrong with me and what is wrong with us, because I'd gone into the main branch of the Brooklyn Library, which is smaller than the main branch of the New York Public Library. Mm-hmm. And I did that whole tourist thing outside where, you do where you put your head up and you turn around.
Yes.
Fortunately, I was with my mother and she's used to me, and so I can't shame her anymore, And I was like, man, we need to do more. We need to do more. And while a lot of the staff members of the JLS, they are committed to their work at the library, but I think one of the things we do to civil servants who care in this country, we make them so used to not having that they assume that the best they can do is not have. And so they really don't know how to try to do differently anymore, and that becomes a key part of it. And then when you come back with all your energy and you try to engage and then you meet up on this, okay, yeah, that sounds like a good idea, but it frustrates you and you feel like going, let me do something else. And so I think that's a huge part of it. And then because they don't get funding, they depend a lot on donated books from larger so they get the books that are left behind. And
Tell about how Rebel Women Let Her Try donate book to library.
Well, yeah, I mean, yeah,
we've been building a better relationship with them. Yes. But when we started, there were so many rules and regulations. Yes. Like, you guys don't want books, do you?
Like I said,
but they're starting to like us now.
I remember when somebody called me and said for the National Reading Competition, they said, we're thinking about using Here Comes the Sun. And I said, have you
children?
Yet? No, because it has adult section. The National Reading Competition goes right up to adults. So
Okay.
So I was really surprised. I don't even know if they used it, but I was really surprised because the JLS is normally so conservative.
Really?
That I would not have imagined they would contemplate it, and so it was good. It was interesting that they I don't know if they use it because a lot of things go into it, because then even when they select a book, then they have to go through the mechanics of actually getting the book, and so there's all of those. So but just the idea that they would think about it indicated there was a shift. But while you are trying to do it, there's also the challenge of donators from foreign, right? And I remember Summer Edwards wrote a great article, I don't remember where it came out, about the tsunami of books and how damaging it is to the region, right? In terms of, I reached out to people who are donating books as Blue Banyan and asked, can you include us? Here's our catalog. And sometimes these are people who follow us on social media, right? And who like the things and who comment on the books and have an understanding of the books they're putting out. It's good. But when they're packaging the books have to be packaged in Miami or in the US somewhere. And we have the misfortune of, well, I mean, since we're Jamaican publishers, we already have the books here. But we don't get into that system. So there are issues around banking and finance that becomes an issue. There are issues about how donations are packaged. And it's not because they're necessarily unthinking. It's just sometimes the mechanics they're working with don't fit you in. So there are a lot of, and they just don't try to reimagine it, you know?
I don't know if I would say that's unthinking, Tanya, because that sounds very political to me. There's no, that type of decision, that type of system seems, whether or not it's deliberate, it's very political.
When bull old and take banana trash tie you, and now me old. You see, you young, you still right.
Just so you know, there are lots of queer books at Tom Redcam Library now because we added them.
And like I said, there is a moment where I could imagine that they would have said no to that. And so what I say is us as readers, us as people who are trying to change, a part of what we change can't just be a conversation with big publishers to include. It can't just be about and I'm not bitter, you know. It can't just be about promoting the big books, because it's not just the few writers who make it through the gate who you should promote. There are a lot of great Caribbean authors who've been writing awesome things for years and then don't get no attention. Them books could I use like a love to, you know, love them up to now. And maybe you don't know about them because one of the things we have done so well as a people is to miseducate ourselves, right? There is a reason Rasta can call education system the head-dication system, right? We've been very good at that. We've done some good work in the, what was that, 50s, 60s, when we had a bit of a renaissance of Caribbean literature, and then we kind of got stuck. So we produced a lot of those books that were very much inward focused, and then people were like, these books are so important, they must be taught in schools. And so they became on the school book lists, and they stayed there and they stayed there,
never left.
you know, and then it became a thing where Caribbean children started thinking of Caribbean books as school book, and them all look like
exactly. Honestly, I say it all the time. I did not know that I liked Caribbean books until I picked up a book that wasn't in school. The first book I picked up that I loved, and I was just like, oh my God, I actually love Caribbean literature, was Kai Miller's Fair of Stones. Just, yo, there's this man on stage at Calabash, because that was my parents' idea of fun. So I went to Calabash, and there's this guy, and I'm like, obviously this guy is gay. How is no one acknowledging this? What? And I was like, my parents like this guy. That must be, that's interesting. So they got the book, and I read it, and I was like, I like Caribbean literature. So all this time I was reading books from, I used to love Jane Austen. I used to love the classics. I used to love all of these European books because they explored all of these worlds, and I thought it was the coolest thing ever. And then there's a Caribbean book that I loved that wasn't her textbook. It wasn't written like her textbook. It wasn't something from the 70s, and they were making reference of, oh, the country boy got home, and I'm tired of reading that story. So it's really finding that voice that connects with you, and which is going to bring me to my other point is, one, why are Caribbean books so much more expensive? And two, what happens to reprinting for Caribbean books? Like, what happens with our rights? Why is it that, because I've been trying to find the Fair of Stones. I have bought and loaned out my copies so many times and I never get them back. Now I'm trying to find it, and the price range on Amazon on a good day is $80. On a bad day, it's $900, and these are secondhand books. Why don't we have that culture of reprinting books?
Again, it's money. So, okay, I remember a conversation I had with a publisher, and I was talking to them about ARCs, right? And so I said, how many ARCs do you print roughly? And they're like, oh, you know, we do a very small run for our ARCs. We only do about 200 or so. And I'm like, that's almost a quarter of my print run. When you and so that becomes a thing. A lot of Caribbean books, especially, and not just Caribbean books, small publishers tend to do smaller print runs, and that often means it's more expensive, right? We have, and note, a lot of what I'm saying is pre social media domination, because social media domination has allowed, as I said earlier, to some change to that in terms of the kind of bang you can make with smaller books, right? And so you do a small print run, and the book might, and by a small print run, I mean maybe 1,000, 2,000 books, right? And it might take you a few years to sell that off, right? And so when you are going again, if the book wasn't popular enough, you have no reason to reprint it. And just not just reason, you don't have the resource to reprint it, right? Because you're looking at other titles to do. And the problem with books, and I say that very advisedly, it's like, whenever I'm in these courses about business and thing, I'm like, the weird thing about books is, books is not a cake, right? When you buy a good slice of cake and you enjoy it, and you're like, blouse and skirt, that cake, they're wicked.
I see what you did there.
Yeah. You can take a piece up tomorrow or next week or the week and buy this exact slice of cake. Once you read a good book, you've read the book, you have it. If you want to experience it again, you can read it again. But unless it's a gift, it's a new book you want, right? You might want something else from the same author because now you trust them because you enjoyed what they put out. And so publishers have to do a balancing game with always having to have new books. It's a part of the reason that even for Blue Banyan, even as our revenue is increasing, our profit, we're going nowhere near profit because we're always having to put in new books or new types of books. And one of the great pleasures for me, which is equally frustrating, is when I am at a fair stand and a little boy or a little girl comes up and they go, I have that one, and we have that one, and we have that one. And you're like, well, yeah, but okay, I don't have anything else to sell you now. You know, and I think, okay, it's great that you are what I like to call a Blue Banyan kid, but it means you need to constantly be refreshing because the book beast always needs something new. And that's one of the differences between other people who are putting out things. I mean, Pepsi just puts out the same Pepsi, and they might do a little something new every now and then, and so that constantly takes a lot more of an injection of capital, and that becomes a part of the thing. And that is why, and I come back to you guys, who can make a difference about what books are talked about. You know, it is important that people who focus on the Caribbean and Blackness and all of these other things don't wait on the legitimacy of a New York Times article to say it's a great book, right? It's very important because, and I'm not questioning New York Times, but when you read their submission policy and they say something like, we receive hundreds of submissions every week, and therefore there is no guarantee that we will review your book. It becomes a thing. So good books can get rejected just because there is no space. And when you look at even with major newspapers and magazines fighting for space at this time, even as they're trying to make more space in the digital world. It becomes a thing. How much can be included? I mean, like, look at what's in the local space. Look at what's happened to the book section at the Observer. Back before when, and I hope I'm allowed to say this, but back when Camilla was still Andrew, right? The Observer had a beautiful book section, and it was a part of what allowed Kai to build his voice, right? And a lot of other writers and a lot of readers. I remember a writer telling a story about how thrilled they were to go to a gas station, and the attendant who is pumping their gas say, "Are you the the Observer? Read that story there now. It wicked."
Wow.
Right? You know, because it came with the paper and it was free.
Yeah.
Access is a thing.
But
right?
Jamaicans don't read.
Exactly. Exactly. But all you can read when I the same book in the bookstore from 1909. And or the same Robert Ludlum and Sydney. The last time walking on bookstore, and them still have Sydney Sheldon and Robert Ludlum. I say, really? I mean, I realized that if you depend, there was a way in which at the time, if you depended on local bookstores, which is a thing you learn, you would be reading the same book over and over again because it just wasn't there. And so how we make things accessible and how we give things a platform is a key part of it. Just the other day, I saw a school, and it is a school with which I have a good relationship. It's talking about, so for parents who are looking for books for your child to read, it's important for them to see books that show people like them. And them uncle show some American book, not one little lion that they on it, not one little nothing. I'm like, how you fit do that? How you fit know that Jamaican publishers are doing a thing, right? I'm not saying you mustn't have standards. I believe in standards, right? I think anybody who wants to put out their book can put out their book, but I reserve the right to say whether or not it is a good book. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying you must support foolish, right? But how, when you're talking about, oh, we must look at ourselves, you deliberately don't name it. And time and again, people do it. I've heard of programs where Jamaicans are responsible for making recommendations, where foreign people buy a book and a foreign book them recommend. And by the time you hear about it, them tell you 2 days before the call done, and it's too late. And them go, oh, we've already decided on the books. I'm sorry, maybe next time. And next time the funders don't come with no money. I mean, ay.
There's so much in terms of what you just said. Let me look at what some of the questions. Bookman Express, who is on, said that as publishers, we have to place more value on local reviewers than the New York Times reviewers, maybe. And I find that to be very interesting because when I first got into this is what happens behind the curtain with the ARC world, I would see the same publishers sending these Caribbean books, these books by Black writers, these books by Black women, these books by queer Black women, all of these other things where I was just like, oh, you could send that to me. I'd be interested in it. They would send them to white bookstagrammers. So it's almost like a replica of what happens where it's like, well, they have 50,000 Instagram followers, they have 100,000 Instagram followers, and they take a picture with like 50 other books in there, and they never actually review it, and they don't get back to it because they don't care about this Caribbean book that you would have heard of. So I'm curious about whether or not, what was the relationship between now? Do you see a new relationship between Caribbean publishers and the new social media people? And do you see a different relationship with Caribbean publishers and bookstores? Because people are asking now in the comment section, why the pharmacy book section look like Social Travel Magazine and Sydney Sheldon? I know you're stressed out for that for multiple reasons. Someone say New York Pharmacy isn't so bad. They have a little Karen Lord. I think some of the pharmacies still have the novelty trade books. Yeah.
Okay, so I'm not going to name the pharmacy. I walked into a pharmacy recently since COVID, right? And I was explaining to some
we're talking.
I was explaining to some book people how deeply problematic our situation is right now. And I walked into the pharmacy and they were reconfiguring their store. And the book section used to be kind of close to the actual pharmacy counter. And when I walked in, I was going to check on my books there. And I saw that they had pushed the book section to so far in the back that you would have to really, really, really want a book to find it. Mm-hmm. So you're having I don't know if it's a chicken or egg situation where, and there was when novelty was strongest, you had seen a shift in this, especially because there has been such a beautiful marriage with novelty and calabash, right?
Yeah.
And so novelty had the calabash books to strengthen its reputation and all of that. And it was doing great. I mean, God bless Susan. She really pushed that stuff, and they were getting more and more space in select pharmacies that were becoming more important than some of the bookstores in terms of if you're looking for book, you know. And so that was a thing. And so what's happened is with the, I'm going to call it retreat of novelty, because they've said they're not completely defunct, but it's not what it used to be either. And we're not sure what's going to happen in the next couple of years. It's meant that you still have those shelves. They are not as manned as they used to be. And the pharmacy people just are not as interested. It took me it took me, I think, 8 months of follow-up to get a pharmacy to agree to stock our books. And then when they stocked the books and the books did sell, you get back in touch with them and you say, all right, so are you ready to reorder? And they go, oh, no, but the books haven't sold. I'm like, yes, they have. If you go, and it's like, all right, we'll check. And then it takes you another couple of months of the we'll check. And then they go, oh, we're thinking about changing up the thing, and they don't get back to you. And it's another 9 months, and I'm not exaggerating, before you get anything. And it involves a lot of calling, it involves a lot of dropping in randomly, it involves a lot of time consuming things for them to do that. And I went into one pharmacy once, and the lady, God bless her soul, and she must know our people them. I'm not blaming her, it's for our people them. She said that her customers are very picky, so they're not really into the local books. And I'm like,
the local books, the other books, the local books.
Sweet baby Jesus. You know, and you know what made me feel good in the way that Misery Loves Company is I tweeted that trauma, and Olive Senior responded to the tweet and said, my love, once she went to a counter, a store, it's one of these in the airport, and she's like, how come you don't have any of my books? This is Olive Senior. Olive freaking
me, Olive Senior.
Right? And the person, and Olive tell me, so I mean, I think she tell lie, right? At least no so.
Olive doesn't lie.
And the lady looked upon Olive and she said, me love, and any book we sell. Exactly. So I'm like, if Olive Senior can get any book, what's it for me? What's it for me?
So clearly they don't stock good books because they're not stocking Olive Senior. Clearly. There's no other explanation for this.
Yeah. And that brings me to why I said don't do it. Because there is still a lot of work to do. And when I say don't do it, I don't really mean it. I want you to do it because misery loves company. And the truth of the matter is as I tell my good friend Kelly Magnus all the time, who has been loaned to violence prevention world, and I keep hoping will come
You
back.
need to come back to the publishing world.
I'm
Like,
like, you need to come back, because the more of us,
crime plan thing now work out. Come back.
the more of us there are who's doing it. And that's a huge part of what's made the difference with Bookstagrammas. As there have been more Caribbean-centric Bookstagrammas and people tweeting at, what do you call them on Twitter? Tweetsters?
They're actually just known as book drama. So I'm realizing there's BookTube, there's Bookstagram, and wherever there's book drama, it's usually Twitter.
Okay. And so all of those people have made it, they've made a difference. You know, they've made it real and they've made it more valid. And again, I say it makes a difference. And the more of us there are in the space, because a part of my challenge has been a lot of what I've been trying to do and I've been doing, there are not as many people doing it. And the more of us, and it's why I often spend a lot of my hours with somebody who calls and says, such and such gave me a number. I was telling them I wanted to publish a book and I don't know how it works. And they said, Tanya Batson-Savage can explain. And I spent hours and hours.
I've been guilty of doing that. Like, oh, she's awesome. We'll talk to her.
And I do it, one, because one, I owe things to Mervyn Morris. And I think Mervyn Morris gave so much to Caribbean literature in terms of how he was willing to read and talk about all kinds of books. And in doing that, you know, I'm like, you have to be willing to share some of your brain space, right? And I'm willing to do that. But then again, it's also because for every other person who takes up this bookish drama, right? It makes it easier for the rest of us. It does, and it's important, and more of us doing it makes it a real thing, you know. And that is critical, and that will mean if everybody who is here wants to know why books aren't in the pharmacy, next time you go to the pharmacy, don't just kiss your teeth and walk out, which is what I do half of the time. Ask them why the book's not there. When you go into Sangsters and Kingston Bookshop, who are trying a little but need to try harder, right? Ask them where are the Caribbean books. And when them show you one section and tell you that is where the consignment book is, ask them how much people come in on Bookstore, ask them for the consignment book. Right. You have to hold them accountable, because people will continue to say books don't matter if they don't know that it matters to you, right? And that I think is an answer to that.
Yeah, I think this year has been very interesting one for literature. I think overall the craziness of this year has just been revealing as to where literature has been slowing down versus where literature needs to be speeding up. And I saw it coming very early and very swiftly, and it's incredible how publishers, bookstores, sellers internationally and regionally have been reacting to it. And it's funny to me because when we just started the book club, and I very naively went to a few bookstores, and I still did it up to last year, and then I decided, no, I'm tired, was to say, hi, these are the books that we've selected for the year, and could you just get these books in time so that people buy? We already have book club members who are willing to buy the books from you. Just get them in time, probably like a few weeks before, even a month or so, and then people will come and buy it. And we will advertise for free that people can come and buy it. And it's weird because the aggression that I was met with, you would never think that I'm here trying to get you more sales. So it was just, so someone pointed out in the comments that even bookstores tend to not be very interested in that relationship, which I find weird.
Because they have, okay, Jerry, you look like a woman who likes fine things, right? Right? Okay, exactly. Um, when you understand what pays you and you create a system that only focuses on what pays you, really, and you hire people and tell them, look at the thing that pays you and don't pay attention to anything else, really, it becomes entrenched in the culture that they don't pay attention to the other things. And then the only thing that works is the thing that was working, right? So when you come and you say, oh, well, we're going to do this, and they're like, yeah, right. Nobody's going to buy those books because nobody's interested. And they say nobody's interested because, as far as they know, nobody's interested. And they never really tried to make anybody interested. I remember when we did our first children's books, I published some small standing banners to put in bookstores. And most of the bookstores wouldn't take them. And then one bookstore agreed to take it and promptly lost them, right? Now this is me just leave my work and have a little bit of money and pump it into a first book and put on a little money for the marketing. And the marketing manager for the store chain lost my poster. Me can barely afford phone back poster at the time, and then lost them, right? There is an entrenched not paying attention and feeling it is okay that is shifting. And again, it is shifting because they are, some of the main bookstores are, if you look now, you will see Kingston Bookshop is trying to get all up in Instagram and Twitter and all of that thing because they're seeing it makes a difference. They're seeing people like you and other people paying attention, and they're like, oh, wait, hold on. You mean if you tell people that the book in the store, they might come in the store and buy the book?
Like magic. You know?
And so that is a part of it. So, you know, it is locally, it is changing a little bit. But it needs to change more. And even what you were saying about like the way in which people are putting out work in relation to COVID and stuff, book world used to be a slower world, but book world is realizing that in the age of Netflix, you have to respond faster. And I say this because you can tell when a book is pre-cable, right? I love Lord of the Rings. I love that book. I love the movie. I love the book. But I was reading the book and I was like, why? If them sing one more set of song, I'm gonna lose my mind.
Thank you. Why are they singing so much? I tried rereading it and I was like, guys, is there always this much singing? It's a musical.
And there was a time when 5 o'clock come, right?
Oh, nothing else to do.
Nothing else to do. You read until you drop asleep, or you go to bed and you out the lantern or whatever.
That is so true, actually.
It makes a difference. And book
It
world
was when GIS came on, I was like, oh, cartoon done. I can go read back my novel now. Well,
exactly.
Parliament start, I can go read back my novel now.
Because at one station you did have
depending on how you turn the antenna, yeah.
Right. But it made a difference. And I mean, listen, as I love to say how old I am, me come from when TV used to sign on and sign off, right? So yeah, when you just come home from school, TV never sign on yet. Right? So what you gonna do? You can play and you can read book. You had more time on your hands and it made a difference, and things could be slower and all of that. And all of that has shifted things, you know. And so we have to change too. And yeah, it's interesting to see what's happening and how it will happen. And I think I'm happy to welcome platforms like yours because it makes a significant difference, right? I can tell you, I know to my company, like just knowing that it's there, just the people who just love books and want to talk about books, it for every frustrating thing I go through, every time I engage with a person who loves books, it makes a difference. And every time I engage with a small child who still acts like books are a wonderful thing, and I see it's oh no, it's not them, it's oh no, right? It makes a huge difference.
So I guess we can kind of start wrapping up now, and that kind of leads me into my not my final, my last set of big questions, which would be how's Blue Banyan responding to the changing world, the rapidly changing world? And for me, it's, well, I can start off with saying how Rebel Women Lit is responding differently. I got tired of dealing with bookstores. I got tired of dealing with, or I've got tired of just trying to get books in. And I decided, yo, we're getting these books in ourselves. We're starting a bookstore. We're not waiting on we're not waiting on anybody to bring in tea by the sea, and we're not waiting to see a whole bunch of Americans posting about a Jamaican book and we can't get access to it. So we're doing this ourselves. We stopped complaining about the libraries. We started our own library system, and we're just when we're helping the libraries and some other stuff. But it that to me has been interesting because while a lot of our trade bookstores remain closed during COVID, we have customers, which was something I never imagined would have been happening. And COVID has really pushed that new part of Rebel Women Lit to take up responsibility and to move the advocacy beyond the complaining and move it into doing something. And it's just being tired of searching for something when you have the power to do it. And I know that's something that I see you have done in your actions over the years, where it's just like, this doesn't exist, I'm going to make it. So what are the changes that are happening at Blue Banyan, and what's the future steps like?
I think one of the things we want to do, and there's a way in which it's not a reactional change. It is things that we've been wanting to do for a while, but it's COVID is good at bringing out the cracks, in the system. And so there's a lot more ways in which we want to push for our presence in the digital space. And we do want to strengthen even our online store. And we do have our books available online. And we want to push that more, a lot more. And we're also working a lot harder to get digital versions of the books, which has been a thing we've wanted to do. But one of the things I really also want to do, which it's interesting, when I left university in the previous century, oh my God. That's the first time.
Oh my God.
You're applying for jobs. The only local publishing company I saw that I thought I would love to work at was Ian Randall. Mm-hmm. And I sent, so we sent English grad or to be grad, because you start sending these things out before Auntie. So I sent to Ian Randall, and they sent me a really nice rejection letter. And it I felt good. Sometimes somebody would take the time to write you a decent letter and it don't make you feel bad. And and I was like, yeah, all right. And I put publishing out of my head, I didn't see myself going down that road. And then when I started to think when I thought of putting out that book, the reason I thought of publishing myself, and that was before I knew the term self-publisher, because I didn't think of myself as a self-publisher. I just had a book I needed to publish. The reason I didn't think of going to any of the local publishers was because, and bear in mind what I said earlier about the role of marketing, and how surprising I found it, was that I didn't think our local publishers spent enough time on marketing. And so I always wanted marketing to be a bigger part of what we do at Blue Banyan. And there is a thing about being the bottle washer and head cook, but especially the bottle washer at a company, you end up in the quagmire. And we have a commitment to editorial standards, which means that I spend an awful lot of time with each book that we put out. And so it takes a lot of time, and it has meant that the work of putting out the books has taken up way more space than the work of marketing the book. And so a part of what we actually want to shift isn't just entry into like digital spaces and whatever, but it's about doing more about of that marketing, of that, making our books more seen and engaging with people. And one of the beautiful things is realizing that there are a lot more people to engage with now. When we just started this journey, a lot of the people who are out there talking about books and sharing things about books, they were not on the scene. I mean, you all were probably like in high school or something, or at best in college. And now you're here, and this is great, and that makes a huge difference. So that is really a part of what we want to do. We definitely want to be louder. I'm going to do that thing again. The blouse and skirt.
Do you have it? So you actually kind of answered Bookman Express's question, which was, what's the policy or approach to incorporating ebooks into what you're doing, and how much do you do it, and how willing or reluctant are you to do it? So I think you answered it.
Yeah, we're very willing, and it was always supposed to be a part of what we do. But yeah, and so we're putting way more focus on that, getting that done. Yeah.
We need to have a separate talk about literary spaces in here, because I don't see, no offense to the existing spaces or the older spaces, but very different from Rebel Women.
No, that is true. No, it is.
I think we need a variety.
Yeah, that is quite true. I mean, and
I can wear my white linens when needed, but I'd like to have more variety in our literary space.
yeah, no, for sure. And even the one of the great things that's also happening is with, and you pointed out, a Rebel Woman's is starting a store, right? And it's easier at this stage in history for you to start a store, something like that, with online ordering and all of those things, without necessarily doing a physical store. And I'm finding like even a space like Brooklyn Caribbean Book Fest. When I was talking to them earlier in the year, I think it might be up already. I'm not sure it's up yet, but they're also doing a store. So there is a way in which the more people who do that and who have an interest in Caribbean books, and if we continue to have conversations where we say, not just the sexy highfalutin ones whom everybody is celebrating, look at the others too. If the more of them who do that is the better that, and by better I mean richer in terms of wider diversity. And I don't mean diversity in the way it's been politicized right now I mean just more, because all Black people are not the same, and all queer people are not the same, but you need more and more stories, different types of books, different types of people, different, all of that stuff. And the more people who see it, and when I say the more monkey see, monkey do, whether follow fashion or not follow fashion, people see that and think, oh, that's a thing, and they do it too. And so it the space just erupts, and that is good.
Nice. Gonna see if there are any more questions in here. Oh, by the way, you should know that there is now a squad called the Senior Squad, where we all rep Olive Senior. Yeah, I actually made a submission for her to become the next poet laureate, but I haven't heard anything about what's happening.
Okay, I will, and I'll tell you this. Today I am driving down the road, and I was like, wait, I haven't heard what happened with the poet laureate. And this is not, I didn't make any such submission, you know, because I didn't even see the call come out this year. And I was like, why are we making Olive Senior poet laureate this year? I really just had that thought, you know, because I know the National Library isn't open to the public yet, but they are at work. So as far as I know, well, not necessarily, not all in the building, but they're supposed to be working. So I don't know if that's what's caused the delay, because Miss Lorna was due to be out in April, and so the new poet laureate should have been in May, June. So and they haven't said anything. So I was really just thinking about it today, but I mean,
people made a submission, so let's see. So the plan is poet laureate, and then she gets the Jamaica award thingy. We'll figure out which one after, but you know, just to beef up her resume a bit more, we're going to give her the poet laureate. We're going to aim for like a really high award for her next year, and we're just going to keep making these plans, you know.
And if I could make one slight interjection for all you book people out there in the book world, I love the fact that Tea by the Sea is getting such attention. But I can please to mention that it get the Una Marson Prize from the Jamaican Writers Society.
I did. The Una Marson Prize, though, that's how I actually found out about Donna Himmons, because I found out, like, I read the article and I was like, who are these people? And then I found River Woman through the actual parish library, the Manchester Parish Library, you know? So, you know, they have books sometimes. I did see a lot of Blue Banyan Books, but it was like still a very tiny section of the library. You could tell that someone thought, let's add some other books here. So there are little glimmers of hope in there.
There are, and it's about, when you see these things, to not get depressed by it and make the change you can, because you might be able to create the world you want to see, but you can do one thing, you know, that does that, you know, and it's very important that we do those things.
Yeah. As you bring up awards, I'm just thinking, oh gosh, we need to stop this live. We've been talking for too long now. But one of the things there are awards that I pay attention to, even though I don't like the list. So there's the National Book Awards in the US. I know once a book is nominated, like a novel is nominated there, I'm not going to like it. I probably will like the poetry book, but I'm not going to like the novel. Booker prizes is always a hit and miss for me. But what I really love about these prizes, especially the ones that everyone pays attention to, is when someone who is a debut author or someone who you've never heard of, these books are in reprints because everybody wants them. I don't see that for our regional and national awards, because the books aren't even available. I books that still aren't available here. And
again, it's because
disconnect, man. It's like the bookstores over here, the awards people over here, the festival people over there. I'm like, you guys know about WhatsApp group?
No, we don't. Maybe we could start a Discord.
Really? I always thought you guys had a WhatsApp group and y'all are just like, yo, it's one of them.
No, we didn't leave you out. We just don't have one. I know, but there is, so like there is, again, we come back to islanding, right? So books that make it through the Bocas Prize don't make an impact here. Not because we don't think the Bocas Prize is important, but we just don't pay enough attention to the region. We're all looking south, right? I think that's where America is. I don't really know.
We're all looking to the National Book Awards in the US. Looking to
exactly where you're looking, and so it's like one of the things I find most challenging. I remember I went to, and this is where I knew how steep the hill I needed to climb was. A well-meaning teacher decided to have a book fair at a very prominent high school, right? And it was a great idea. They invited booksellers and publishers to come in and set up a stand. And, kids would come in and thing. And I'm there, and the books are there. And the kids came in and walked right past and went and bought like Hunger Games and all of those things. And or when the parents came in and they would look and they're like, oh, this looks interesting. This looks interesting. Yeah, but she gave me a list. And they go and they pick up, and it's all the books from the popular lists. And that's not a criticism of what the children are reading. It's just to state in terms of the machinery that promotes those books is so massive, and it has all of this attention. And part of what happens in the local space is that that's the same space you're competing with. I remember when I was in a business course and I put up, Scholastic as one of my competitors. And the person is like, are you crazy? You can't compete with Scholastic, or you must put up Scholastic as your competitor. But I'm like, but Scholastic owns 80% of the shelf space of the stores in the Caribbean. So how we must not think of them as my competitor, right? They're able to afford regional distribution, so they can hire agents in the region to go around and do that. I have struggled with, you call bookstores in Trinidad, and Lord, with the exception of Paper Based, which was one of the first bookstores to pay me any mind, right? And
really?
then Book Emporium.
I love them so much.
Those, yeah, I mean, you ball blood and them don't pay you no mind. You call the people and tell them, say, I come from Jamaica, and them say they will call you back, and nothing, right? And there is a lot of it, and a lot of these, they're just like the main bookstores in Jamaica as well, where their focus is textbooks. And because that is where the majority of the money is, that's where their bread and butter comes from, right? No, actually, it's where their bread and meat come from, right? We trying to bring like a butter to the story, and them are really interested in the butter because them have gravy, right? And that becomes a part of the challenge. So, which is why, and I come back again, or role as and I was so glad that Bookman Express is in this conversation, because they're also doing some interesting things. And we have to amplify each other, and book people. It's like you go to these spaces, and I'm at the age now when I stop cuss as much as me used to. I mean, I'm tired of going someplace where somebody goes, oh yeah, I remember you. You cuss off the lady from such and such a bank at that meeting, or you was cussing. I was like, I am tired of being that kind of savage. Right? So I'm a gentler soul now in my old age, right? And so now I'm more about finding ways in which we can amplify each other. And I've been working with, I was lucky enough to be invited by a group of other small producers who are doing things and working together. And you find out, oh, this is working for you. Oh, okay, you're right. We should have a WhatsApp group. I talk to people like Kelly. I talk to a worthy friend who's in Mandeville. We work together. But you need to have more of that conversation, because we are tiny, right? We can do massive things, and our stories are big, but we are small, and we need each other. And if we don't, and it's not that we're trying to fight against, I have not got a sense that we've been fighting against, but we haven't figured out how to really amplify each other. And that is a critical next step,
Yeah. I was going to ask you if you're having the same issues with bookstores and pharmacies across the region, but I've also heard from Caribbean bookstagrammers from I say it all the time, once you see Blows and Skirt or once you see Blue Banyan on the back of the book, you don't need to read the summary, just pick it up. You haven't read it, pick it up and buy it, you'll be fine. Honestly, I think that's the beauty with small publishers, is they have a distinct brand, you know you can pick it up and you know what to expect. I say that a lot about the name slipped me now, but we're reading one of their books later this year. They're based in Nigeria. Gosh, how could I forget?
No, they're in the UK. It's not, no, Jacaranda is in the UK. I know who it is you're talking about.
I'm like looking at the book right now and I'm like, anyways, but we have some of their books in the library and we're reading one of their books later. It's just that you know what to expect, you know the quality that you're getting, and they're not going to be picking books that they don't, that aren't good quality, because they know what they need, and your reputation, your money is at stake. So yeah, I'll be talking to Caribbean bookstagrammers who are just like, oh, we don't know these books, or they can't get them, and I'm just like, what is happening? I don't expect these books to be in Barnes and Nobles, but I definitely expect them to be in Austin's in Guyana.
Yeah, but this is the thing. So I have significant issues, and I'm not going to air them on YouTube. But one of the trials I have is, so last year, oh my God. Last year.
Just reminded me, Cassava Republic.
Yes.
Love them. I also don't read the summaries. I'm just like, okay, cool, let's get that.
Last year I had the pleasure of getting the Caribbean rights for Shakira Bourne's My Fishy Stepmom. I think it's going to be published by some big publisher next year under a different name in North America and stuff. But we got the Caribbean rights. Now, Shakira is Bajan, right? Shakira is Bajan living in Barbados. Mm-hmm. Her publisher happens to be in Jamaica, living in Jamaica. Both countries are a part of CARICOM. I emailed and or called. I asked her to send me a list of bookstores and stuff. I emailed and or called every one of them. And with the exception of 2, they were all like, oh, this sounds really great, but we can't order from Jamaica. And so one of the things I'm trying to spend hours on figuring out right now is how to make it easier. It is actually easier for my distributor in Trinidad. The conversation we're currently have is, it's too expensive to get the books from Jamaica to Trinidad. You can find a way to send it to Miami so I can get it from Miami. Where we need to figure out how to work as a region. We need to understand that CARICOM is supposed to be a real thing. You can't be having a book published in the region by a writer in the region, and when you send it from Jamaica to Trinidad, it's been hit with taxes. What is up with that? But if the bookstore find it easier and cheaper to order from the UK, for England there, right? It's easier for them to get it from over there. So we have like those distribution issues that we still have in the region is a key part of what we need to fix. And if we don't fix that, that Caribbean, the Caribbean, and then who want to celebrate the books will find it hard. But the beauty of it is the region don't have superstars, because you can't be big in the Caribbean, because it's like somebody did say about it. I don't want the killer cussing on to me, but and say, oh, about the killer must hype, right? Regardless of how big he is, somebody gonna say, yeah, I know a killer from him did a sell figurine. We're a small community, so everybody knows everybody. So that concept of a star who is inaccessible doesn't really work in the region. And I say that it means every person who is reviewing books, etc., has the right and can easily reach out to the publisher directly to say, I'm interested in reviewing this book, etc., etc. Can you send us a copy? Can you, because we who are creating books, we are very much wanting to get in touch with you as well. I'm taking fast and talking for other people, but as far as I know, we do. So reach out. I certainly am willing to hear from you, and I'm certainly willing to look at if you need to make yourself au fait with our books that we've previously published that you've never seen. Ask about us about a couple of those too. That is not a problem, because we need your amplification. The region is way bigger than our population.
Yes.
And it's about time we treated our books that way.
Mm-hmm. All right. I think that's an excellent note to end this part of the conversation with, because my mind just went so many other places. I'm just like, how does Yui get their books around? What about that? Like, my mind just went all over. Anyways, so thank you so much, Tanya. And I know quite a few people who are in the chat and people who will be reading later. Link Blue Banyan Books, link Bookman Express, link all the publishers here in the region. One of the things that we've been really trying to do at Rebel Women, I think previously we've been reading a lot more of the popular books by Black women, popular books by queer people. I'm just like, okay, hold on. This year we need to focus and be more.
Yeah, me notice. I'm gonna say yes.
I it's something. It's constantly trying to revise my politics, constantly trying to see, okay, what can we do more deliberately? What can we do that has more of an impact? We don't have to read the book that came out, like it's coming out next month. We can go to a backlist. What book came out 2-3 years ago that hasn't been getting much attention? So yeah, it's constantly revising what we do and realizing the power that we have in this space and encouraging other people to do the same. Please reach out to Caribbean publishers. Please reach out. Like, honestly, guys, you're not going to pick up a Penguin book and know if it's good or bad, but you will pick up a Blue Banyan book and know that it's always good. I can guarantee you that, or I will pay for the book for you if you don't like it. I'm willing to put my money on the line. Tanya, do not let me down. This video will be up for a while. But yes, please. And thank you so much for joining us tonight. And please share this conversation. If there are any other conversations that you want to know more about and learn about, please let me know, because I'm learning a lot. I tell you, 3 years ago, I had no clue what an ARC was. So this whole space is still pretty new to me. So thank you. Thank you so much for spending your time with me, Tanya. Thank you guys so much for spending time with us here tonight in the chat. It's so cool that there's so many bookish people who are joining us to listen about books. Who would have known? So yes. All right, so I'm gonna end this now, and hopefully that ends the actual thing on YouTube. Yes. Bye.